All right. Good morning, everybody. This is our last day of fish and shellfish. It's just gonna be over. We're gonna go over cooking techniques for fish. Okay, so let's get started. So I have let me go ahead and present this. I have this video. This first one, I don't want you to watch the whole thing. This is like a 30-minute video of how to fillet every fish. But I'm gonna at least get through a couple where you can see the different. I mean, there's really no difference between the freshwater and saltwater round fish. But I just want you to see the different size techniques. So we'll start with this one. That's not what I hit.
I'm Mike Cruz, manager of Greenpoint Fish Wholesale, and I'm here to show you how to fillet every fish. To fillet fish, I usually have around 3 knives with me, depending on the size of the fish. One of these butcher knives is really good for cutting through heads, this 7-inch curved fillet knife, and a little 5-inch guy. You also need a pair of scissors, a steel to keep your knife sharp, a scaler, and a good pair of tweezers to get those pin bones out. Sardine. I think people kind of think of sardines as something Grandpa has in a tin tucked away and hasn't touched in like 10 years. Sardines require no tools to prepare. Any scales that you see on here are totally edible and are always served whole if they're fresh. So to prepare a sardine, you're gonna open up that gill plate, grab it from the gills and pinch them out. Once the gills are free, you'll grab it from the collar here, and without much pressure, it tears right off. So now, holding onto the collar and the gills, and using your finger to sort of open up the belly, you'll take out all the guts. As soon as you do that, the rib bones start separating on their own, and touching one side of the spine, you can use your finger sort of like a knife and just run it straight down. And do the same exact thing to the other side. Make sure you're completely free. Then pick the spine up from the center. You'll sort of slip the tail through, pull these up, and take them out. And then you will have a butterfly sardine. Porgy. Porgy is a classic East Coast fish. I always look at porgies as the pigeons of the sea, which is not a bad thing. I say that usually because they have some crazy colors in them when they first come out of the water. Lots of like purples and greens and blues. It's a classic like fish fry spot fish for sure. So to start, we'll grab our scaler, get that fin out of the way, start peeling scales back, making sure you're going diagonal against the grain of the scales from the tail towards the head, making sure you're getting everything out of the way that's gonna get in the way of your knife. If you have difficulty scaling these fish, just play around with the position of the scaler. I mean, it just kind of depends on the fish and how much trouble the scales are giving you. Skeletal structure is gonna be pretty basic. You pull this up, get right down underneath that collar, and come out. So you make your first cut at the head. Now, porgies can be skinny sometimes, so especially important to make sure that you are staying tight to the bones. Crack through the pin bones on the ribs, pushing down on them, and peeling the fillet back. Now, one thing I think people don't give porgy enough credit for is its fat content, and you'll feel it as you cut this, how oily the fish is. That's porgy fillet. Boston mackerel. This fish is highly oily, definitely has a strong fish flavor, which is great because...
All right, so you saw the small fish. How he did the porgy is pretty much how you would do fish around here. That's not, we don't get that big of fish around here. So your bass, your bluegill, those kind of things.
It is a fish. Super good for you, super high in omega fatty acids, really good for like brain development and things like that. This fish is awesome and my personal favorite. So Boston mackerel is a great fish to eat whole. Kind of wobbles a little bit while you're cutting it, and I'm pushing down on the ribs to flex them out of my way. Once those are free, you can pretty much put your knife in and just follow straight down. And you'll trim up that belly membrane. You'll have a nice filleted bronzino. Striped bass.
There you go.
So this is actually a farm-raised striped bass. Most of you that will be familiar with wild striped bass here on the East Coast are going to see that this is obviously very different. But with striped bass fisheries being at such critical conditions as they are right now, it's probably a pretty good alternative for us to start looking at farm-raised stripers. So with this fish, we're going to have to scale it. And with these fish particularly, you can clean up the collars, and those are delicious. And now we're going to gut this guy. cut here. Enter with your scissor facing up towards the collar and towards the belly. Cracking this open, and just pinch the gills, not cutting through them. You're gonna twist and go up and out. And you should get most of it with it. And this guy, we'll just take a paper towel, clean the inside out. Now we're gonna cut this guy. Pulling taut, I'm gonna make a sharp angle cut, free up the collar, and then just gently come down on the back of the spine. Angling up to crack those pin bones and get through the belly. And the same thing to the other side. I actually just got stuck there. And a good thing to do when you get stuck, actually, say you crack through the skeleton itself and you have half the fillet free and part of it's still sort of stuck on there, lift up where you're stuck and just get the very tip of your knife and just start scraping little by little until you get those bones free, pushing down and angling your knife towards the skeleton until you're freed up. And don't get too stressed. I'm Mike Cruz, manager. Run it on. Flip back over. Finish your cut. Fish. And all you want to do is trim up this rib. Green for sustainability. Very similar to a rainbow trout, maybe a little closer to salmon in flavor. They're strong flavored, fatty, really good for poaching, baking. Anything you do with salmon, you do with steelhead trout. This one has very small scales and are extremely sticky. And these guys can be pretty slimy and sort of difficult to deal with if it's your first time, but just cut right through the head. Again, you can see the fish has main spine, bone on each side. You can just start there. You want to aim to be pretty much on top of the fins. And with this, you want to make really gentle, slow movements. This is not the most forgiving fish to fillet. And again, here you'll just crack through all the bones here and get into the belly. And this, you want to put a lot of pressure down on that belly. They're very flexible, so they're not going to break. Other side is similar. Start at the tail. Finish your cut. We're going to trim up the belly membrane. Let's steelhead trout. Tilefish. Tilefish is a deep sea fish, actually. They are predators for sure. They like to eat sweet things like clams, crabs. It gives a slight sweetness to the flesh. It's very similar to red snapper, actually.
This guy's fish. So he's going to do a salmon. Poo.
We all know we should be eating more fish, but if you're just...
All right, we're going to go back. So that is the basic way to fillet fish. The bigger the fish, you know, the bigger the knife you need, pretty much. Okay, starting with the smallest one to the largest. So this one is how to cook some of these different styles of fish. I thought this one was pretty decent. And then we got a couple more. Well, we'll kind of go over the different cooking.
My shopping guide to getting the finest fish. When I buy my fish, I only want the freshest and the best. And if anyone knows how to get the best, it's... He's been buying and selling fish at the world-famous Billingsgate Market in London for over 50 years.
I love fish. I think it's the greatest food of all time. I sell literally every variety there is. I could feed you a different fish 365 days a year.
This guy really knows how to sniff out the good from the bad.
All fish smell different. The longer it's around, the more fishy it will smell. When it's lovely and fresh, it doesn't smell. Whenever you're going to buy fish, don't be frightened. Get your nose right into it. Don't go like that. Get it into it. Smell it. Smells delightful. It smells what I call salmony, and it's lovely. Barramundi. It's a lovely fish. The way to tell good fish is.
All right, we're going to get through.
Whole salmon always impresses. It's fantastic stuffed and steamed, either in a fish kettle or in the oven wrapped in foil. Steaks are great value and brilliant baked. A side of salmon is perfect for poaching, home curing,
so this
or
is just
baking
the
in
purchasing
pastry.
of the fish.
The fillet is so versatile, easy, fast to cook, and great for pan frying. Smoked salmon, delicious cooked or raw. I love it with scrambled eggs.
What vehicle are y'all working on?
1972 Monte Carlo.
Got a 75 Camaro.
Broadly, there's whitefish.
Add a bay leaf and thyme, veg ready. Fresh enough for royalty,
Now he's gonna
follow
find
your
what to do.
fishmonger's advice, and you'll never, ever have another
This one was
dodgy
important.
dinosaur again. Mussels with
I kind
celery
of found
and chili.
this like before we started the whole seafood thing, but I didn't want to give you guys like 1,000
First,
different.
prep the veg, chop spring onions,
Not for
shallots,
fish videos, but that one's pretty good.
a clove of garlic, and chili to taste. Then thinly sliced celery, add a bay leaf and thyme, veg ready. Add oil to a pan and fry.
All right.
Season, then add mussels and stir.
So what he's doing is basically sauteing mussels, and you're going to end up steaming it with a little bit of basically the oil, and then he's probably going to add vinegar or white wine to this. So yeah, you saute them, you saute your vegetables first, and then once they get a little color to them, you add a liquid in there that gives it like a very aromatic smell, and then you toss in the mussels, and then the steam from that will start to cook them, like to the point where they'll open up. And then, yeah, you finish it with your fresh herbs, butter, and then there you get your steamed mussels. This is a very classic dish that people do at restaurants all the time. It's really quick. Mussels are really cheap, and they look really nice.
Lobsters. And I'll be cooking them very simply with chili and garlic butter. Serving them with Bloody Mary linguine. I'm going to start with the pasta sauce.
I love the indulgence in this dish. If I was doing this for the kids, I'd scrap the vodka and just do like a Virgin Mary. But it's a bit of a grown-up's dish. Now, pan nice and hot. Splash of olive oil. Onions in. Seasoning, touch of salt and pepper. Garlic. Be nice and generous with your garlic. It's not just your average tomato sauce, it's a royal, stunning tomato sauce. And you're in for a big treat. Season your onions and garlic with your Tabasco. That will give that really nice lift. A little pinch of celery salt. Spice that up with Worcester sauce. It instantly colours the tomatoes. Goes brilliantly well with the celery salt, Tabasco, and that nice caramelised garlic. A little light sprinkling of sugar. All the Worcester sauce has reduced down. We've got this nice, sweet, spicy, sticky, garlicky onion base. Glazed with a couple of spoons of vodka in. Lovely. Woo. Chopped tomatoes in. To 8 minutes.
So this is his
Reduce it down
sauce
slowly.
for the
Turn down the gas and let that simmer.
linguine.
Get them nice and crispy, but don't put too much oil in there.
This
Otherwise the
part
bread will just
is
absorb
probably
it
making the
and
stuff
become
lobster.
greasy.
So
Beautifully
toasting
season them,
the,
and they go really nice
toasting
and golden
seasoning,
brown.
the bread comes first.
30 seconds before they come out. Flat leaf parsley.
Let's see where he goes with this.
You can hear how crispy they are.
Kind of making a nice
Before I cook the
flavorful
linguine,
crust.
I'm going to make the chili.
Touch of salt. A nice clove of garlic. And get some parsley. Start breaking that down. But I'm looking for a lovely garlic chili paste. Exactly like that. Now, don't overdo it with the butter.
Herb butters are a great way to flavour fish and meat. They can be used as a stuffing in dishes like chicken Kiev, or added towards the end of a dish as a delicious glaze.
What he just used there is
Lobsters.
called a mortar and pestle.
They're already cooked. So,
Very traditional.
firmly place the lobster
Those are already cooked
flat
lobsters
on
too,
your
by the way.
board. There's a little crisscross here. Line there and a line going
Mortar and
across.
pestle is traditional
Put the
way.
point of the knife in
Sauce.
and just push through.
They're very nice. Because those
the
are
head.
what you do.
Turn the
Just
lobster
put everything
around.
in there, it grinds it up. It's like the old.
Cut
It's like before
through
they
the
had
lobster.
food processors, which they still work really
Snap
nice.
the legs
but
off.
Food processors
Snap the claws off.
work.
Just get
but,
the back of your knife.
They will mash and puree
Crack them.
food and not leave some of it kind of whole and chunky.
Spread that beautiful butter on. Go into the heads as well. And then the claws. Take off bits of the shell and get little bits of butter in there. This can be done way in advance. For me, the longer that chili butter sits on top of that lobster,
All right, so he's got the
flavour,
little puree
especially
inside.
when they hit the grill.
While my lobster firms up in the fridge,
Yeah, he's gonna
I can
put it
finish
out
cooking my
in the fridge.
linguine.
Water, broth, linguine style.
Be perfect.
Doo-doo-doo. Wow.
We all know we should be eating more fish, but if you're just starting out cooking, we all know we should be eating more fish, but if you're just starting out cooking,
Having technical difficulties here.
We all know we should be eating more fish, but if you're just starting out cooking, it can be really daunting.
Delicious crab cakes with cream corn and soda asparagus.
All right. Well, the lobster one, since these refuse to play when I want them to, basically he took those breadcrumbs and then you're going to toast them, which I really do want to see. So you guys could see that.
My shopping guide to getting the finest.
At the very end. All right, so.
My shopping guide to getting the finest. We're just going to bring it down here. And grilling your crispy
pasta's
breadcrumbs.
done. You guys learned how to cook pasta.
That
right,
butter's
so here's
gotten
the
really
part
nice and firm. So the idea is
taking your
slapping that down,
lobsters
and grilling.
And then
the smell of that chili and garlic butter.
That was a lot different. I thought he was actually
because the lobster's cooked. All you're doing is grilling that
and the thing with this is everything he's put in there.
Chili butter. You just want that mark of the char quickly on the lobster. Turn that over. Smell is incredible.
So even the lobsters, he probably already had those steamed off because they were red and they weren't moving. So
you can understand why it is proper special occasion food.
That's
because
part of that.
That is my shopping guide to getting the finest fish.
All right, let's go down. Okay, so this one, this is more cooking for the fish 101, or cooking with the fish.
We all know we should be eating more fish, but if you're just starting out cooking, it can be really daunting. But it doesn't have to be. There are so many great, foolproof ways to cook fish. We're going to show you a few ways to cook fish so that you can incorporate it into your diet and never get bored. The first method we're going to show you is baking fish. It's probably the easiest way to cook fish. It's foolproof. You could just do it with salt and pepper, but adding a marinade is just a way to impart more flavor, so it's a little more. We all know we should be eating fish. It's probably the easiest way to cook fish. It's foolproof. You could just do it with salt and pepper, but adding a marinade is just a way to impart more flavor, so it's a little more exciting. So I'm gonna make a really easy, quick marinade with garlic, some Fresno chilies, soy sauce, and a little balsamic. So you can really get creative with your marinades. The most important thing is to make sure you.
So what she's doing is making a sweet, salty, acidic marinade, like she was saying. Put the fish in there. Basically, you want to rotate this as well. The soy sauce and everything in there is going to kind of draw out some of the natural juices of that fish. And then it's going to kind of rehydrate inside. So even while it's marinating in the fridge, like she said, 60 to 90 minutes, you're going to want to keep turning that. Not every 5 seconds, but every few minutes, go back in there and turn it. So bake at 400. And then, like it says on here, salmon can be served rare. Like salmon sushi is actually really good. Nice. And that's easy. Like that's something you guys could do at your house. It's not very messy. And the good thing is a lot of the salmon you guys get at the store, the farm raised ones are the ones that are a lot cheaper. But a lot of times those are the ones that have that very, I don't know. I do not like the taste of farm raised fish. I don't know why. I'm not trying to be bougie, but it's not good. So if you marinate it, it'll take on the flavor of the marinade, okay? And then it'll just kind of leave whatever flavor is left of the fish that's not as horrible. So it's a good way. This is probably one of my favorite ways to have fish, just the pan fried. What I would have done is gone back in there with that pan and put either some stock or some cream, white wine, something, and made a little sauce to put over the top. Searing tuna is like the best way to have it. You never want to have tuna cooked all the way through. I mean, if you do, you might as well just buy a can.
For searing, you're going to want to use a stainless steel or cast iron pan. They can handle higher heat, and you're going to get a better crust on the bottom. Preheat the pan over high heat. Once it begins to get really hot, you can add the tuna. You don't need to add any more oil since it's already on the fish. For tuna, you want to cook it for about 2.5 minutes per side. The sides of the fish should be opaque and the inside should be pink.
Nice.
Once the sides are completely opaque, remove it from the heat and let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes. Searing is great for deeply colored, oily, flavorful, high-quality fish. You can really let the flavor of the fish stand out with searing. Pan frying and searing is a bit more advanced, but it's a great way to get more of a variety of texture and great flavor out of your fish. Next up, poaching. Poaching fish gets a bad rep for being super boring, but it doesn't have to be. Here's an easy way to make a really flavorful poached fish. The joy of poaching is that it's super easy. You fill a pot with water and then you can add basically whatever you want. We're gonna add leeks, dill, lemon juice, and salt. You could add other alliums, you could add spices, it's really up to you. The important thing is just make sure you have some kind of acid and salt. Once you've got all that in your pot, then add the fish, then we're gonna turn the heat on. Poaching is great for fish that are really flavorful on their own, like salmon, Arctic char, and halibut. For a deep poach, you generally want to bring the heat up between 140 degrees to 180 degrees. We're gonna poach at 160 degrees, which is a good middle point.
So yeah,
once the
poaching
water is at 160
is a really
degrees,
good way to cook
that's when you
fish.
set your timer. We're gonna set it for about 12
Same thing,
minutes
it
or
just
until
takes
the
on the
fish turns
flavor of what
opaque.
you're cooking
This
it in.
depends on the size of your
So,
fish, so just make
key
sure to
for
keep
me
an
is
eye
I
on it.
would've
You wanna
cooked
make sure the
that
temperature
broth
doesn't
a
get
little
too
bit
hot,
more.
otherwise the fish could break
It
apart
looks
and
like
you're gonna
she-
have a
it looks
really
like a lot of
rough,
these vegetables are not
overcooked
cooked
texture.
down, so
The joy of
flavor's not
poaching
gonna
is
come
that you
out.
can do it
Fish
with
cooks
water,
really
you can do it with
fast.
wine, or you can
So-
even do it with olive oil. Poaching doesn't have to
You're
be
not gonna
boring,
get
and it's really easy. It's
that
another
much flavor
great
with that
weeknight
salmon from the
option.
cooking liquid.
So now that you've learned a healthy way to cook fish, we're gonna talk about an unhealthy one,
And then there's deep
frying.
frying.
Frying's great with batter. When frying fish,
This
you
is a
wanna use
typical
a
method.
mild white fish. Like
I'm gonna mute this. I don't know if you can hear it anyway. Basically, you want to cut your fish into the most equal sized pieces that you can possibly get. Not for each other, but mainly for its own cooking. So you don't want to take a thick piece of fish and cut it lengthwise where the one end's this big and the other end's this big, because this is going to be raw by the time this is burnt. So you want to cut them into even chunks. That's why a lot of times when you get fish and chips at restaurants, you'll see these sticks about this big. What they do is they kind of lay it out. And what I would do as a chef is I'd look at it, cut the tail off because that's all one piece, and then cut the rest of it like belly, and then cut the top part of the fillet into probably like 2 big strips. There you go. And your batter, flour, whatever you want to make, you know, if you batter it as you do dry, and then you make like a wet batter, typically like tempura and beer batter, like that's kind of like it. You have something with bubbles in there. So you're making like cornstarch flour and something with carbonation. So like even seltzer water. So it has those bubbles to it. And that gives it a real nice, fluffy crisp to it. So that's nice. Those are some quick ways. I mean, those are really good. That's the beauty thing of fish. It cooks so fast that you don't need to sit there. It's not like a beef roast where you're like, I need like 10 hours to cook this thing. It's not like that at all. That's why I really like fish. I wish I lived on the ocean. Okay, this last one is I wanted to show you guys. I didn't put a whole bunch of series of stuff on here on crabs, but crab cakes are probably one of my favorite dishes.
Delicious crab cakes with cream corn and soda asparagus.
And this, I don't know if you guys can hear this because it's not playing very loud in my
Now, the most important
area.
thing about making an amazing
But
crab cake is shape.
the good thing with crab cakes is, like it says, shape the cake and let it rest the night before so it kind of solidifies. You can do this with salmon patties. You can do this with leftover fish. You can do it with a can of fish. You know, tuna's not that great, but they're not bad. If you want to do, if you want to buy a can of salmon, make sure you pick a lot of the big bones out. Do the same thing. So hold on. I think he's going to show you. Oh, he does it with cream corn. But the cake part, I wanted to see the breading. See how I did the dry, the flour, the egg wash, and then the breadcrumbs, and then the shape of it. Basically, what you put in these, you take your meat, which I'll probably do a salmon cake for you or a crab cake so you guys can see how it works. You take your even leftover salmon, you put it in a bowl, you kind of mash it up. The only thing you technically need inside this thing are seasonings if you want them, breadcrumbs, and some sort of binder. So the binder could be mayonnaise, because mayonnaise is basically eggs and oil. So you can put mayonnaise in there and that'll be kind of a binder. If you want to put a couple whipped eggs in it, you can do that. but you don't want to put a ton of stuff in here. One of the best chefs, well, not the best chef, he was a good chef that I worked for. His main tip was, you know, the flavor of the meat is what you want to shine. You don't want to put a ton of stuff inside there and where you don't even taste the crab. So buy good crab meat or have your good meat, and then put in some mayonnaise, a little bit of mustard, you know, Worcestershire if you want it. If you want to cook up some or dice up some, you know, peppers and onions really tiny, kind of fold that into your crab cake mixture. That's a really good way to do it too. So you take those, cool them, and then fold that in, and then gently fold this thing together. Traditionally, a lot of times they would take, these were invented like on the coast, and they would have like oyster crackers, stuff like that laying around because they'd have soup. This is a really good, keep watching him with this creamed corn. This is one of my favorite ways to do corn. So you guys will kind of remember that video I did where I did the fried corn. He does the same thing, and I want you to see how he does the cream, because this is what you guys did for your mac and cheese. So you take your corn, add the heavy cream to it, and just start bringing it to a simmer, and that's going to thicken to like paste. But anywho, so they'd have these little oyster crackers on the East Coast for your chowders and stuff. They'd smash those, fold them in with a little bit of crab cakes, and then you can either bread them like he did, or you can just cook them just like that. Like nice butter, you could broil them. They just get a nice crisp flavor, and I think it's the best way to use salmon. Like I would actually prefer to buy raw salmon, poach it, roast it, and then crumble it up and make salmon cakes with it. So that's how I would prefer to serve these. What he's doing here is a classic dish they do at restaurants. So doing a sauteed asparagus. I think you put the little lime or lemon on there, cheese, and then the plating is what's nice. But I want you to see so those are almost done. But I want you to see the corn. To see how that turned into almost like a sauce. Watch. That's just from the cream, but it gets super thick. And especially in Indiana around August, end of summer, when you get that fresh Indiana corn, it's so good like this. All right, so crab cake's done. And the reason you put it in the oven, because I muted this, they get nice and brown in the pan, but that thing is so thick and it's cold because you refrigerated that overnight. You need to finish it in the oven, just make sure they're hot in the middle. But you see the cream corn with the asparagus? That's nice. But that's going to be really good. This is one of those dishes, you eat a bite of everything at once. You don't separate the dish, okay? You don't want to take the crab cake and eat it separately and the corn and eat it separately. You want to cut a piece of the asparagus, get a scoop of corn, and cut off a piece of the crab cake, and you eat it at once. That's how you professionally eat. So that's what it is. I just want to show you guys a few more videos on fish. Remind you of the filleting process, and then kind of show you the filleting process plus how to cook it several different ways. Those were easy ways to cook fish. And then I don't know if you guys wanted me to put this up separately, I will, so you guys can watch these again. All right, so that's the end of fish and shellfish. I hope you enjoyed it. And we will catch you back later.